Hey, Walt here from WaltonPA.com with episode 3 of Shooting the Breeze, the formal gun podcast of WaltonPA.com. And before we get started with the show, I want to talk a little bit about the format of the show tonight. It's going to be a little bit different, partially because of lack of planning, and partially because things have been kind of slow this week for one reason or another. I had mentioned in the past that I use Google Reader to generate news information for the news part of this show. And in addition to that, I use Google Reader to pick different featured topics from, or not so much, just featured content. And that is the bulk of the show. And generally, I'll build my show notes throughout the course of a week. So when the last episode aired, I started a new document and then started filling in information or filling in content for the following week. And for whatever reason, this week has just been tremendously slow. I have really been struggling to find content to plug in there. And I've spent all week just reading through news articles that really didn't interest me. Nothing jumped out and grabbed me. So I was really struggling. I was going to skip the news altogether. So I go back, and I wound up going back several weeks in the reader, and just picking out stuff that I had passed over before or didn't see or whatever the case was. That I passed it by, but now I'm sort of recycling it. So some of the stuff is out of date, not by much. I mean, we're talking early August. It's not terribly out of date, but it's not new news. And in addition to that, the featured content has been kind of slow too. A lot of the blogs that I typically read have been putting out content that isn't like featured content worthy, so to speak. It's not something that was really thought-provoking. There was, for instance, GunNuts produced a couple of posts outlining scores from a recent match. Because they're away at a match, things have been a little slow there. So there's a blog that I generally read and pull featured content from, is sort of off the radar for this week. So there's not a lot of information to pull from there. So I decided to skip the featured topic, or the featured segment of the show this week, and focus more on what I've done in guns, because I got out and I was able to shoot for a little bit on Sunday morning. So with all that said, let's dive into the show, and we'll get things rolling. Alright, it is time for the news. And this is actually a follow-up story to something that happened earlier on, which I thought was kind of interesting. If you remember, I didn't cover any of this on the other show, but if you've been reading the news or watching the news, there was an incident in, I believe it's Santa Rosa, California, where there was a community outreach taking place, and I believe the SWAT team, the SWAT team was there doing this community outreach, and while there were a lot of kids around, and the kids were handling the guns and looking at the other equipment, and some pictures made it on the internet, and there was just a storm of negativity around, saying that these police officers were grossly out of line. You're promoting violence by letting children handle machine guns. So it was kind of crazy. But there was another article released that I came across. Actually, it was just recently. This is one of the only new pieces of news that I have. And it's entitled, "California Police Sticking to Guns in Defense of Letting Kids Hold Automatic Weapons." And this one is written by Maxim Lott, published August 18th, 2011. And this comes from Fox News. So the article kicks off, "Would you let your kid touch a machine gun?" Photos of officers from the Santa Rosa Police Department letting kids handle the department's SWAT team weaponry at a community event has sparked a debate over how much exposure to guns is healthy for kids. Community organizers Adelina Nagy, who took the photos, told FoxNews.com that he was concerned it might encourage kids to use guns in the future. "My main concern is for kids who handle these things. They're fascinated by them, and it makes them familiar with guns," he said. One city councilwoman, Marcia Van Dupree, told the local paper that she was alarmed and devastated by the photos. But the police department is pushing back, saying that they see nothing wrong with how they handled the event. "The weapons are rendered safe and are unloaded. We ensure the safety of those weapons," Santa Rosa Police Captain Gary Negri told Fox News, adding that police attend the event to build ties between the police and the community. Our goal is saying to people, hey, don't be intimidated by the police. We want to break down that barrier. Once these events are over, people will be more comfortable having conversations with officers. Another goal, Negri said, was to educate kids about guns. Education and gun safety is a component of what we do. We teach kids the difference between a real gun and a Toys R Us gun. But the department's response hasn't convinced anyone. One woman, Elaine Holtz, was so concerned by the SWAT team's weapons that she approached the police officer at the community event and asked what was going on. I would not want my child to be involved with something like that. Those guns, they should have been behind glass to teach kids that you don't want to deal with this gun because it kills, Holtz told Fox News. I am coming from the heart of a woman, a mother, a grandmother, she added. Despite the complaints, some gun safety experts say the police are right, and that data shows kids who grow up with legal guns are actually less likely to get in trouble. The U.S. Department of Justice study showed that children introduced to firearms by their fathers had lower rate of delinquency than children who learned about guns on the street, or even children who had no experience with guns at all. Dr. Tim Wheeling of the Group of Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership told Fox News. The 1994 Justice Department report concluded, boys who own legal firearms are even slightly less delinquent than non-owners of guns. Specifically, 14% of kids with legal firearms committed street crimes compared to 24% of kids with no guns at home. Given that, Wheeling said, the response to the police action seemed overblown. If this controlled lesson in firearms helped the kids understand that guns are not toys, some good could come from it. The knee-jerk reaction to the police outreach by locals was clearly excessive. The pro-gun control Brady Center to Prevent Gun Violence declined to comment. Whether the police event actually helped the kids understand that guns are not toys is a matter of debate. It wasn't a safe thing, Nagy said, contesting the police version of the story. That's misinformation. I was there. The gun was displayed. The kids just picked it up and played with it. Nagy cited his photo as evidence. In one of the photos I took, as Elaine Holtz was talking to the officer, you can see a little boy is reaching up to the table and grabbing a gun. The youngest kid there was maybe 5 years old. Holtz said that when she asked the officer what was going on, he replied that they were doing training, but that she did not find his answer convincing. I did not see any education going on. It looked like it was just fun, she said. And I think we generally have a good police department. But what happened here was poorly thought out. Police Captain Negri said that the department is looking at whether we want to change our track in the future. But for now, the police are sticking to their guns. Gun safety is part of the discussion we have with kids, Negri said. These kids, what do they learn about guns from video games, movies, and TV? A lot of the questions we get from kids are way off base, so it's helpful to have some realistic dialogue. So that wraps up the news article. I'm sorry, I really butchered that. I didn't read it enough times before it was actually time to read it aloud, and that was probably my second time reading it. And some of this stuff is kind of enraging to think that the sight of a gun can induce violence among young people. And the photo that this woman is talking about is actually featured on it's the first picture in the article. And the little kid's reaching up, he's grabbing onto a gun. I can't tell what it is. It's got a giant drum. It probably shoots some sort of canister or tear gas or something. But you really can't see the police officer's head because it's cut off in the photo. It looks like he may be talking to the three other people in the frame. I was looking at a lot of the other photos in the slideshow, and it looks as though, these kids are handling the guns safely. Even though they are unloaded and safe, I didn't see any fingers on the triggers. The guns seem to have been pointed in a safe direction. Now, granted, you're looking at a picture, you don't know what's beyond the frame, but there was nothing really wrong with what I saw. I see professionals who are trained in the use of these weapons demonstrating them or showing them to children who now have a grasp of what the difference between that fake Toys R Us gun is and this real machine that's used in police activity and SWAT training and SWAT activity. So I think that this whole thing is way overblown. It's you're just looking at these kids and assuming that just because they are seeing guns up close and personal, and the fact that they're not behind glass, which is mind-boggling, you're just assuming that these kids are going to be just a hinder to society, and by being around guns, you're promoting violence, and that's just wrong in my opinion. But that is that news article. Well, let's move on to our second news item, and I just want to warn you here. You may want to get your boots on, ladies and gentlemen, because things are about to get really deep in this article. This was just so strange and anti-gun that I wanted to mix it in and include this. This was published on August 11th by Jacqueline Burt, and it is from the website The Stir. It looks like, from cafemom.com. And this one is entitled, Fugitive Siblings Crime Spree Was Made Possible by Florida Gun Laws. I'll let that one soak in a little bit. Okay. Fugitive Siblings Crime Spree Was Made Possible by Florida Gun Laws. The manhunt for 3 fugitive siblings from Florida ended on Wednesday when the trio was arrested after a high-speed chase on a stretch of Colorado highway. Authorities are relieved that the Doherty gang, I believe that's Doherty or Daughtry, we're going to assume that it's Doherty because I haven't seen a news report or actually heard this name pronounced. Anyway, the Doherty gang, as they're being called, were caught before any civilians or police officers had to die. But now that the siblings are in custody, maybe we should be figuring out why, exactly, it was so easy for 3 convicted felons to collect an arsenal including an Uzi, an AK-47, and many other deadly weapons. Okay. 3 convicted felons is bolded, arsenal bolded, Uzi bolded, AK-47 bolded, deadly weapons bolded. I don't know why you needed to know the emphasis, but I just thought I'd give it to you anyway. Perhaps it has something to do with the fact that Florida's gun control laws are among the most lenient in the country, surpassing even Arizona by the standards of some. I was shocked to learn that private firearm sales between residents are permitted without any processing through an FFL. Well, that explains how 21-year-old Ryan Doherty, who has 14 felony arrests on his record, managed to buy an AK-47 at a pawn shop while he was still a teenager. Now, I'm not trying to start a debate about what exactly the precise implication of Second Amendments are, botched that paragraph. Let's start over. Now, I'm not trying to start debate about what exactly the precise implications of the Second Amendment are for our modern times. Although, funny thing, our forefathers didn't have semi-automatic rifles, remember? That said, I just feel like there's something a tiny bit off about a system that allows a kid wearing a court-ordered ankle monitoring device to waltz into a pawn shop and leave with an AK-47. Am I wrong? Or does that sound like it should be a Saturday Night Live skit among the lines of Appalachian Emergency Room? The other disturbing part of this story is that the siblings possessed an arsenal so large that they had to store it in a custom-built underground bunker beneath their house. And when the police got there, after the initial bank robbery attempted murder of a cop that kicked off the nationwide chase, the entire bunker was empty. So that was some serious heat they were packing across state lines. States whose gun control laws might not have been quite as hands-off as the laws in Florida, but I hardly think the Doherty gang was concerned, do you? Then the question is posed, did Florida's gun control law make Doherty's gang crime spree possible? How could a law forbidding you from doing something, a law, the premise of the law telling you cannot do this, how would that possibly make something possible? And then it's it's just crazy. If this bunker was so big and so custom built and huge underground that it maintained this massive arsenal, how did they get away with the guns? Were they driving a tour bus, or was this underground bunker more like a basement, a tiny room underground? I don't quite understand that. But bashing the law because these people decided to commit crimes is absurd. I mean, it's just absurd. I don't know what else to say aside from that. You've got these three people that are hell-bent on breaking the law. It doesn't matter what the laws were. If they were more stringent, they would have just found another way to do whatever they want. Their gun laws laws in particular don't have implications to the people that are hell-bent on breaking those laws. They're already criminals. What difference does it make if something is more illegal than it already is? Do you really think they're going to stop and say, oh wait, I could get 10 years instead of 5 by breaking this law? I'm not going to do it. It's not the way things work. That just doesn't seem logical to me. And if you read through some of the comments, it's great because all of them are, the ones that I've read are very positive. And the best comment award is this one here. This, I don't remember who wrote it. This is just a copy and I love this comment kind of a thing. But anyway, I think Florida and the federal government should step up to the plate and make it illegal to rob banks and attempt to murder police officers. Then people would stop robbing banks and attempting to murder police officers. Wait, what? I feel the same way. Weird, just horribly anti-gun article from someone that seems to be making something out of nothing, with some comments by people that seem to get it, or at least they may not get it, but at least we're on the same page here, the same wavelength. That'd be me and the people that commented on the article, and maybe you too if you're watching this. Well, we're coming down the home stretch. Here is the last news article that I've got for you, and this was published on August 6th. Actually, it was published on the 16th. The news article is entitled "Victims Share Gun-Free Horror at August 6th National Self-Defense Conference." And this is from a website called Human Events, More Powerful Conservative Voices. And again, this one came through Google Alerts for the keywords self-defense, gun, pistol, or self-defense and gun, pistol, rifle, shotgun, variety of other keywords. But at any rate, I thought this was kind of interesting. So let's start reading. 2 women, victims of gun violence in gun-free zones, opened the August 6th National Self-Defense Conference in Washington, organized by the Students for Concealed Carry on Campus and the Second Amendment Foundation. Had the law allowed the women to carry their guns, they would not have been attacked, said Amanda Collins, who was then a student at the Reno campus of the University of Nevada when she was attacked. The second woman, Nikki Gozer, said that she blamed gun violence that she experienced on gun control laws. Gozer said that her husband was shot and killed in a bar in April 2009 by a man who had been stalking her. At the time, the laws in Tennessee prevented individuals from carrying a gun in an establishment that served alcohol. My husband and I were both victims of gun-free zone. My husband and I were both victims of a gun-free zone. Anyway, the article goes on to say, the signs designated areas as gun-free zones have no positive effect, she said. The only people who care about these signs are law-abiding citizens. Criminals know that law-abiding citizens will be unarmed and helpless to protect themselves, she said. Gun-free zones are death zones. Collins said that she was returning to her car in the school's parking lot garage when she was held at gunpoint and raped by a complete stranger. Although she was a holder of a concealed carry permit, she said that she was not allowed to carry her gun in the parking garage because her university is a gun-free zone. My right to say no was taken away from me by both James Balia and the Nevada legislature, she said. All I wanted was a chance to defend myself, and campus carry would have given me that chance. Collins disagrees with opponents of gun rights who claim that she and other victims would be safer with increased security since her attack, which took place less than 300 feet from the campus, police campus police station, she said. Even the blue emergency call boxes installed on her campus were useless to her once Beale attacked, she said. As bad as their situation is, Collins said it was important to remember that violent crimes are often repeated by the same criminal. After her rape, Beale went on to rape 2 other girls and killed one of them. Collins said that she believed that if she had been armed with her own firearm, she would have saved herself and others from the tragedy her attacker wrought on them. The 2 other rapes would have been prevented and a young life would have been saved. The conference also featured a debate between John Lott, author of More Guns, Less Crime, and Colin Goddard, a victim of Virginia Tech shootings. Lott, an economist, said after a handgun ban goes into effect, gun violence always increases. In the case of Washington's handgun ban, gun violence by about 40%. The comma really threw me off there. I didn't quite understand what was going on. Even before the crack cocaine epidemic. It's not just DC and Chicago. You have to look around the world. Time after time, you see increases after a gun ban goes into effect, said Lott. The case of the Virginia Tech shootings, Lott said handgun bans on campus are not effective deterrents because being expelled from school is insignificant compared to multiple death penalties. Lott said in most cases the attacker in a multiple victim shooting expects to be killed by police or plans to commit homicide or commit suicide. Gun control laws do not work as deterrents, he said. They do not protect themselves as being around. Wow, I'm really horrible with this reading thing right now. Gun control laws do not work as deterrents, he said. They do not perceive themselves as being around to have to face the consequences. Goddard said that the severity of the Virginia Tech shooting was not due to the fact that it was a gun-free zone, but because of too few gun restrictions and improper safety measures on campus. He said that it was not the simple matter choice gun advocates present. Someone is going to come in that door and shoot you. Do you want a gun or not? The solution is to have more serious background checks of gun owners, he said. If you agree with the general sentiment, and I do, guns don't kill people, people kill people, then you'll agree that we need to be checking those people, he said. Then, with more serious background checks, the next step is to have a system in place for law enforcement agencies to share the background information. In the case of the Virginia Tech shooter, his background information had not been shared, said Goddard. At that point, Lott spoke up and said Goddard's attacker had in fact passed the background check because he had not been involuntarily committed. So there is an article going back and forth on the potential benefits or risks of campus carry, and it's kind of interesting in general. I agree with Collins in that if she had her gun handy as a concealed carry weapons permit holder, she could have defended herself from that rape and potentially saved 2 other women from being raped and one other woman from being killed. I would assume raped, then killed. So it doesn't matter how closely spaced those call boxes are. If you're being attacked and you can't get to them to pick up the phone and dial a number, they really don't do you much good. If you're licensed to carry and you clear your background check and the state gives you the green light to carry your weapon concealed, I really don't see any reason why you should be prevented to carry on, say, a college campus where you're looking at mostly adults. It's gun-free zones are no deterrent to criminals, and the only people that follow that sign or follow the rules of that sign are the people that follow the rules to begin with. So, interesting article, and now on to segment 2, where there's usually featured content, but not this time. Alright, well, it is time for segment 2, which is generally where I feature content and tell you about all the cool things I came across on the web over the past week or since the last show, and I generally direct you to go check it out for yourself. And then afterwards I'll give you a little bit of opinion and build on said featured article. But this time around, because things have been kind of slow, I decided to take this segment out and replace it by an email that I received recently. Or actually, it wasn't an email. It was a Facebook comment. And if I can find my window, here we are. Now, as I mentioned in the last episode, I didn't really have time to cover it because I can get kind of long-winded, and I was afraid that I was going to push over my time limit. So I wanted to do it in this particular episode because I felt as though I'd have a little bit more time, or I was going to kind of try to jam it in there somewhere and then shift things around so that time-wise everything worked out. So this time we're going to feature it, and the question comes from Richard on Facebook, who says, "Nice review. I don't know much about handguns, but was hoping to learn a thing or two here. Would a small handgun like this be good for home protection, or is it more for concealment on the body?" Now, this particular comment came after I posted a picture or a link to my review of the Smith & Wesson Bodyguard. If you've been following my blog, a few weeks ago, I did a video a lot like this one, and I was talking about my being in the market for a pocket pistol. Now, I generally carry a Springfield XD subcompact, and it rides in a Crossbreed Super Tuck Deluxe. I love the gun. It's a lot of fun to shoot. I shoot it fairly well. The Crossbreed holster is fantastic. It is the most comfortable holster that I've ever worn, and it was my first real quote-unquote holster, not just that bargain basement or generic thing that you buy from Midway. So, it was a significant amount of money, and it was a good quality product, and I loved it. It was great. But I was running into times where the Springfield XD was a little too big. Even though it was a subcompact, there were times that it was just a little too bulky, a little too heavy, and I needed something a little more discreet. So I sat down and I thought long and hard about getting a pocket pistol, something I could just easily slip into a pocket and just be done with it. Something that, if I needed to quick hop in the car and run to the store to get, a gallon of milk or something like that, I could just toss the gun in my pocket as opposed to strapping on the heavier Springfield XD. So I start looking around, and I finally decided on the Smith & Wesson Bodyguard. I brought it home. I fondled it a bunch. I was kind of oogling over it. It was awesome. And then I didn't get to the range until that weekend sometime, which was just a few days later. But I recorded the range session and me talking about my first impression firing the gun. And this question came from it. And I just kind of wanted to answer it publicly. I did answer it on Facebook, but I thought it would be kind of cool to feature it, and maybe in featuring it, some other people would get the idea to leave questions and stuff, so that I could have more to talk about than the stuff that I pull out of Google Reader. But at any rate, it is of my opinion that gun is for concealment on the body alone. I mean, granted, it would work in a home defense situation. However, the caliber is small. It's .380. It doesn't have a very high capacity. It's only 6 rounds plus 1. So basically the magazine holds 6. So if you load the magazine with 6, insert it in the gun, rack the slide to chamber around, then take the magazine back out, you can load 1 more into it. So you've got 6 rounds in the magazine, 1 in the chamber. So it holds 7 rounds total. Now, granted, if something ever were to go down in your house and you had to shoot to save your life, I'm going to really hope you never have to use more than 1 or 2 shots, whatever is necessary. But we're kind of hoping you don't have to blast off 7 rounds. But in the event that something does happen, you're the more the merrier, I guess. Because you don't need to hide that concealed, or you don't need to hide that home defense weapon. Slipping it inside the drawer of your end table or your bedside table. You don't need this tiny little gun that's going to fit in your pocket. You can go with a full-size pistol or a revolver, where in the case of 9mm, you can get 17 rounds as opposed to 7. Not only can you get 17, but you're looking at a larger caliber in 9mm as opposed to .380. So you're definitely at an advantage there, because you've got lots and lots of rounds. You don't need to worry about how big and bulky the gun is, because it's going to get put in a pistol safe or locked up somehow if you don't have any kids or a wife that may find it, or isn't familiar with handguns, or a husband for that matter. It can just sit on your bedside table and just kind of be at the ready. And in addition, the bigger guns are a little easier to handle. That small bodyguard, I mean, while it shoots well, and I'm really happy with it, in a stressful environment in the dark, I mean, even though it does have the laser and all, but I think I would much have the bigger, beefier Smith & Wesson M&P that I have, and it's just easier to manage. It's more gun to hold on to, and it holds lots and lots of rounds. I mean, you could sacrifice some of that round count by going up in caliber, like going 40 or 45. But that's the beauty of the self-defense pistol, where you don't need to hide it, or you don't need to hide it on your person. You can make that decision to go larger, and there's really no consequence other than, unless you got a really tight space that you need to fit this gun into. And if that's the case, just find somewhere else to put it. So in a nutshell, that's my opinion. If you're looking at purchasing a home defense pistol, I would look at something full size, as opposed to the mouse guns or the backup guns that you'll see in the Ruger LCP, the Diamondback 380, the Taurus TCP, I believe. A lot of the small frame guns. I think there are better options for home defense. And in the case of home defense, I mean, some people need a pistol for home defense, so they feel that the pistol is the best choice for them. Maybe you've got kids, and you need something that will be easily stored inside a pistol safe on your bedside table. Or, for whatever reason, just a long gun is no good. If that is the case, again, go full-size pistol. If you have no kids or anything like that, and you can get away with a long gun, my suggestion would be to go with a shotgun. There's nothing more terrifying than hearing the racking of a shotgun in the dark. I mean, I don't know I don't have any personal experience with it, but I think it would be mighty scary to hear that, because it's a very distinct sound. And if I were a burglar climbing through a window and I heard that, I'd be getting out as fast as humanly possible. But different strokes for different folks. Well, that wound up being much shorter than I anticipated. I wrote out a bunch of notes, and I really managed to touch on all those notes really quickly. So I'm kind of surprised that it didn't take very long. So, because I don't want the total time of segment 2 being like 6 minutes, maybe we'll talk a little bit about my cigar and drink pairing for this evening, and then in segment 3, we'll just talk about what I've been shooting, or what I've been doing in shooting. And, we'll just kind of let the cards fall where they fall. And if this episode winds up short, I'm giving you a break. You don't have to listen to me talk so long. And if you're on the other side of the coin, where you want these really long videos, I'm sorry, maybe I'll make it up next time. So, the cigar and drink pairing is This is the EP Carrillo Edition Limitada 2010. Now, if you're familiar with cigars and you're looking at me waving this thing around, you're probably thinking to yourself, that is not an Edition Limitada, or that is not the limited edition 2010. And you're right, it doesn't look like one, but it is. This is a mislabeled EP Carrillo Edition Limitada 2010. And there's a little bit of a backstory behind that. And yes, it is really genuine. It is mislabeled. It's not just something I bought from a store. If you're familiar with the other thing that I do, Stogie Review, you may remember a while back I was doing these blind cigar reviews. And what I would do was take cigars from a manufacturer, pop all the bands off of them, put together an informational packet, which was basically just a questionnaire that I stapled together with a flavor wheel at the end and some basic flavor descriptors. And I would go to a cigar shop, I'd set my camera up in the corner, and I would run a blind tasting. And these people would smoke these unbanded cigars, and they would put down all their opinion on these worksheets that I provided, and they would talk amongst themselves, and everything would be gathered on the camera. And then I would present this information to Stogie Review, revealing what the cigar was, after everything was said and done. And when I was going to do this one tasting for this local shop in the area, Sir Stogie's, I reached out to Ernesto Perez Carrillo. And in this case, I was talking to his son, Ernie. And I told him what I wanted to do, and I asked him if he was interested in providing a cigar. So he says, yeah, sure, let me look around, see what I've got, and then I'll send you some stuff, and you can do the tasting. We'd be really happy to provide product for that. So it was a day or two later, I get to talking to Ernie again. He sends me out some cigars, and he says, I want you to do the tasting on these LE 2010s. He said, the only problem is they're old. They were from the first batch that we did, and we ran out of, apparently they didn't put the bands on them until later on, but they ran out of the secondary LE 2010 bands. And he said, it's not a big deal, right? Because you're going to be popping the bands off anyway. I said, no, it's not a big deal. I know what they are. I'll take them to the event and present them as such after everyone smokes them. And the fact that they're missing the secondary band is not a big deal. So Ernie sends me the cigars. I put together the package, and I go down to the cigar shop and I do the blind tasting. And I wound up with like 3 or 4 people less than what I was anticipating. So I had some leftover cigars, and this is one of those leftover cigars. And I grab one out of the bag every now and again. I just got to remember that this is the LE 2010, and I have to keep them separate from the core line that looks a lot like this. And the cigar is going really well. I really like these cigars, but the crazy thing about this is that age really seems to neuter these cigars. The first time I had one of the LE 2010s, the first thing I said was, wow, the cigar is really intense. It's hard hitting, it's incredibly flavorful, it's very full bodied, it's kind of over the top, and really that doesn't happen a whole lot with cigars for me. But this one was just hitting the palate really, really hard. And I remember noting several times that, this cigar is really not for the faint of heart. And then the Elencos came out, which was the repackaged LE 2010, and I thought the very same thing. And when I got this from Ernie, I said, are you sure these are the LE 2010s? Because these cigars are much, much milder. And he says, I'm absolutely sure they are the limited edition 2010 without the secondary band. And the flavor profile is very similar to what I remember, but the intensity is toned down dramatically, and I think that comes from age. So, very good cigar. I like it far more now than I did the first time I tried it, because it was a bit too much for me. But these cigars are smoking really, really, really well right now. Now, the beverage that I'm pairing it with is a little bit of scotch, and the reason I'm drinking scotch tonight is because I'm all out of Zaya, and I tend to drink really, really slow, and when I do these videos, I drink even slower. And I like bourbon on the rocks. I was going to do bourbon tonight, but then I thought to myself, I'm going to put an ice cube or two in the bourbon, and I'm not going to get to it. Next thing you know, I'm going to have bourbon and water, and the glass is going to be sweating all over the place. So I poured some scotch neat, and this is Johnnie Walker Black Label. Now, I'm not a real big Johnnie Walker guy. I mean, I haven't had the really high-end stuff, the green and the blue, but my first ever experience with scotch was Johnnie Walker Red, and it was just a really, really bad experience. I thought it tasted horrible. And it wasn't like I got plastered over it or anything. I bought a bottle because I really was interested in getting into scotch. And looking around at the liquor store, I'm seeing all these really expensive scotches, and then I see the Johnnie Walker Red for like $20. So I go with the Johnnie Walker Red. I bring it home. I try it. It's just really, really bad. I try it again later on with another cigar, and it's just really, really bad. And I think I may end up drinking like this much out of the bottle. I mean, we're talking out of the neck of the bottle. And I just got rid of it. It was just really, really bad. And my wife decided to get me this Johnnie Walker Black Label for some occasion. I don't remember what it was. But I brought it home, and I gave it a shot. And, it's kind of It's decent scotch, but I'm not really crazy about it. I like Macallan a lot better. I like Glenlivet a lot better. Glenfiddich a lot better. But I taste subtle notes of the red label in the black label, even though it is smoother and crisper, and the flavor profile is more bright and just better overall. I still taste notes of the red label in there. That medicine-y, putrid-esque hints or notes of flavor are buried in the scotch. I can taste it, and I just get flashbacks to that Johnnie Walker Red every time I bring the glass to my lips. So I just have to kind of try to put it out of my mind and just enjoy the better quality black label, or the more expensive black label. and try to forget about the red label. So that is the cigar and drink pairing for the episode. EP Carrillo Edition Limitada 2010 and Johnnie Walker Black. And if you can't find the Edition Limitada 2010, which is understandable, you can go find the EP Carrillo Elencos, same cigar, black and gray band, same blend, just different band. And Johnnie Walker Black is readily available practically everywhere. It's a very popular scotch. Well, here we are with segment 3. The show is winding down to a close, and I really didn't have a featured topic. So what I decided to do was talk about my recent range session. And the reason I decided to do that over picking a featured topic is just because, the range session has been on my mind, and I had a blast. It was the first time in quite a while that I was actually able to hang out at the range for an extended period of time. Generally, or over the last couple of weekends, I've been really busy with family stuff, and the last real range session I had was test firing the Smith & Wesson Bodyguard. I fired probably 24 rounds through that, and before I left, I fired off the rest of the 9mm I had in a variety of magazines from the USPSA match I shot several weeks before. So it was just kind of like, put 24 rounds through the Bodyguard and then just use up this little bit of 9mm and then pack up and go home because I had things to do. So it's been a little while since I got a chance to put any real range time in or any real trigger time in. So I got up bright and early on Sunday morning and I headed over to the range. I got there right at 8 a.m. when you're permitted to shoot. It was fairly decent weather. It was a little cloudy and it looked like we might get some rain, but I was pretty eager to start shooting anyway. So I get down there, I set up one of my homemade IDPA targets. And again, if you follow my blog, you saw the video on that. Basically what I did was I took an IDPA target and I transferred it onto a piece of 1/4-inch NBF or Masonite. And then I used that piece of 1/4-inch Masonite, I stick it on top of a piece of cardboard, trace my shape, mark my scoring zones, and voila, I've got homemade targets that really don't cost me anything, and I don't have to cut up boxes of baby stuff and bundle it up and put it out for recycling. Instead, I can take it to the range and blow holes in it, which is much more fun than bundling cardboard up for recycling. So, more fun way to recycle stuff. So anyway, I get over there and I set up this IDPA target, and what I decided to do was I had some wider pieces of cardboard, so what I did was I made hostage or no-shoot targets. So I took a full IDPA target and I traced the shape and I marked it in red so that it was a no-shoot, and then I just kind of made another version of the IDPA target fit in the other corner, so that I only traced part of it and only a section of this actual victim or attacker target is visible, and the hostage takes up the bulk of the cardboard. So I've got a partially obscured center mass section, and I've got a head and a shoulder visible to me from the firing line. So I set everything up, I get out my Smith & Wesson M&P, and I start shooting. And I don't know whether it's sort of a mental mind game that was going on or if my shots were just breaking left, but I found myself pulling all of my shots away from the hostage. And, I intentionally, I didn't want to hold the sights too close to the hostage because I didn't want to hit it. Even though it's just a piece of cardboard, in my mind, I do not want to hit this hostage target for anything. I want to get as close as possible, hit the center mass, but I don't want to hit it. So I don't know whether it was just a mental thing or what, but I'm drifting away, and I'm hitting just outside the big center ring in the IDPA target. I'm hitting more up in the shoulder area. My grouping is good, but everything is consistently drifting left. So I don't know whether it was just something I was doing in my gun handling, or if mentally I was just easing away from that hostage because I didn't want to hit it by mistake. I don't know how many rounds I put down range, but it was, I don't know, maybe between 70 and 100 rounds. And I had so much fun getting out there and shooting that M&P. It's just a gun that I absolutely love. I had some rust issues with it earlier on, and I sent it back to Smith & Wesson. They took care of it. The customer service was fantastic. I'm really, really impressed with Smith & Wesson, and that is one of the big reasons why I was looking at the Bodyguard, because I had such good experiences with Smith & Wesson customer service. I mean, having to use customer service is never a good thing, but in the event that you do, you want good quality service, and I was really genuinely impressed with what I got from Smith & Wesson. So that was a big thumbs up on going with the Bodyguard. But anyway, I really enjoy shooting this gun. It's a lot of fun, and I have an absolute blast with it, with USPSA shooting. I'm thinking about upgrading the sight. I kind of want to do that Apex trigger kit, but at the same time, I kind of want to just kind of leave it stock because it's just so much fun as it is. So I'm kind of torn. I don't know whether I want to do some upgrades to the gun or not, but I'm just really, really happy with it. You know, one of the things that I do when I go to the range is I like to take my camera along. I have a little flip cam, and I'll set it up on a shooting bench and just point it towards me, hit the record button, and I'll just record the whole session. And it's basically me taking 5 shots and then me walking down to tape the target and do whatever, take a picture of the target and then walk back. And there's actually very little of me shooting, but I edit all that stuff out, and I've got it condensed down to some footage of me shooting a string of 5 rounds, and then I drop a photo in there of those 5 rounds, and then I analyze everything that's going on. So I see myself shoot 5 rounds. Then the video the picture pops up. I get to see the placement of all those shots, and then there's another 5 rounds, another photo, another 5 rounds, another photo, and I get to see what's going on. It's kind of like a golfer with this golf swing. You want to see. It's easier to critique what you're doing when you can sit back and watch yourself do it, instead of maybe miss something minute or something minor that you're doing on the firing line. You don't realize it. So having that footage has been a tremendous help for me. I get to see a lot of the things that I'm doing wrong. And even as a novice shooter, even though I don't know the finer points of what I'm doing wrong, it's very apparent that I'm doing something wrong, and I can sort of zero in on it and work on it during the next range session. So some of the things that I saw was my feet were all over the place. I would just step up to the firing line, insert the magazine, chamber around, and get shooting. And I never really found a comfortable spot. And one of the things that I realized that I was doing before was my back was kind of straight up and my arms are out and I'm shooting. And watching the video, I'm standing up there. Even though I feel like I'm leaning forward, my shoulders are almost kind of behind my hips. And when the gun goes off, I can see myself rocking back just a little bit. So the next range session, this one in particular, I've got myself leaning really far forward. My shoulders are definitely in front of my hips. There's forward motion, but I don't know where my feet should go. You know, should they be shoulder width apart, sort of in line with one another? And when I lean forward, I feel like I'm going to topple. So that's not really a comfortable position. I even tried bending the knees a little bit, getting the center of gravity down a little bit, leaning forward that same way, and that still feels kind of awkward. So what I found myself doing most often is I would put my left foot forward and then lean way out. And that felt the most comfortable. I don't know if there's a technical term for that stance, or whether it's a modified weaver or anything like that, how my shoulders are placed. But both arms are forward. My shoulders are kind of in line. I'm not sort of twisted so that I'm looking down my one arm. But I've got one leg extended forward, heavy leaning, and firing. Another thing that I noticed that I'm doing wrong, or that I need to work on, is I never have my support hand rotated far enough. And when I do, in those occasions when I do extend or roll it forward as much as I need to, my shots are better. The gun feels like it recoils less, but it's just a little more comfortable to rotate it back just a little bit. So I need to work on getting that wrist cocked forward so that it's less likely to twist when the recoil goes off, or when the gun goes off, and I feel recoil. So I definitely got to see some of the things that I was doing wrong, and I even got some comments today on my blog about some of the things that I should look into. And you know, I love constructive criticism. It makes me a better shooter, and these are things I want to apply to my shooting during USPSA matches. Now, after I was done shooting my Smith & Wesson M&P, I shot some rounds through my Springfield XD, my subcompact carry gun. I didn't shoot nearly as many rounds. I probably put 25 rounds through the gun, and for whatever reason, when I go to the range, I don't like shooting all my ammo. So I went there with a half a box of 40, or it was a half of a value pack of 40. So I had 50 rounds, and I think I shot 25, just so that I had a couple of rounds, just in case, for whatever reason, I wanted to go to the range on a spur-of-the-moment decision, even though that never happens. I just like to have a few rounds, just in case. So I put 25 rounds down range, just to kind of knock the rust off, or keep myself up to shooting shape with my carry gun, and I did pretty well. My shots drifted more left with that gun than with my M&P. Again, I don't know if it was the hostage target, because I'm still shooting the same target, whether that has anything to do with it, or whether I just need to fine-tune my grip. But I shot that for a little bit. I enjoyed it. The recoil's kind of snappy, but it's a gun that I really enjoy. One of the things I don't like about that gun is the trigger actually makes the pad of my finger hurt a little bit. The Smith & Wesson M&P trigger, kind of, it's a broken trigger, but you've got a trigger that kind of comes down like this, and then there's a break sort of where my knuckle is, and when you pull the trigger, you have to extend that portion of trigger, and when it bottoms out, then the whole trigger pulls back. So you can't grab the trigger up here and pull it. You have to pull from down here so that it engages and then the trigger pulls. Well, the trigger on the XD is sort of like that, but it's not broken here at the joint. It's broken down the center of the trigger, like the back of my finger. And the center portion sticks out. And when the gun goes off, I feel like I grind the pad of my finger on that center section. It's not a big deal shooting 10, 15, 20 rounds, but I found that in extended range sessions where I'm shooting 100 rounds, the pad of my finger really hurts from that. And I don't know whether I should maybe consider getting in there and rounding the edge of that trigger portion over just to soften it a little bit, or if there's an aftermarket option to make the gun just a little bit more comfortable to shoot. But I really enjoy the gun. It's just that minor little trigger thing that makes my finger hurt. That's the only thing I don't like about it. After that, I got to shooting another 25 rounds through the Smith & Wesson Bodyguard. I would have shot more, but my jaw practically hit the floor when I looked at pricing on 380. I mean, it was... I started buying 380 for my Beretta Model 70S, which I rarely shoot anymore. But that was my first pistol, and I was conscious of how much 380 cost because of that gun. Now, it's been a while since I bought it, but the last time I got a Winchester White Box value pack of 100 rounds, it was like $27, $28, $29. It's more expensive than 9mm, but it was okay. It was something I could deal with it. Well, when I went to Walmart to pick up a value box the other day, just for this range session, it was almost $40 a box, and my jaw practically hit the floor when I saw it. So I bought a 50-round box for like $17, and I didn't want to shoot all of it because, I mean, it's like I'm shooting gold-plated ammunition or something. It's really expensive. So I need to look into maybe getting into reloading. It's something I want to do anyway, but with the cost of 380 and the fact that I want to keep sharp with shooting my pocket pistol, just like I am with my carry gun, I'm going to need to find a way to decrease the cost of that 380 ammunition, and I think reloading would be a good option, and maybe loading lead-nose bullets and trying to drop the price that way. After that, I got to shooting my wife's Beretta Neos, her little 22. I probably put 100 rounds or more through that. It's a lot of fun to shoot. I really enjoy that gun, and I'm kind of struggling. I need to adjust the sight even more. For whatever reason, all my shots are going high. They were going very high and right, and I thought maybe it was just me, but I'm shooting hundreds of rounds through it, and all of them are going high right. I'm holding low left, and shots are going in a general area where I want them to. So because it's got adjustable sights, I started messing around with the sights a little bit. I've got the windage set up so that I'm shooting center, but I need to bring the rear sight up so that my shots come down, and my point of impact is where I'm aiming and not a little bit above. But really fun gun. One of these days I want to put a red dot on it, and no magnification red dot sight, just for fun. But I haven't gotten around to it. That gun is by far the cheapest one I have to shoot. Boxes of 550 rounds or something like $22. And there's very little recoil. You can shoot that gun all day long and then all night long, and the only thing that's going to happen is your arms are going to get tired from holding up that 6-inch barrel because it's a heavy gun. But really enjoyed it. I had a great time at the range. All of those guns I recorded range footage of, and I'll be posting those on my blog throughout the week as filler content. And that's going to wrap it up for the show. That's going to do it. I'm not quite sure where I'm at time-wise. I think I'm around an hour, probably a little bit short. But, I'm kind of happy with where the show went. I really wish I would have had a little more content or a little fresher content, but it is what it is. And I'm not quite sure when the next show will be up. I've got some Stogie Review stuff going on this weekend. I'll be at the famous Cigar Expo in Easton, Pennsylvania. It's a big annual event held at the famous smoke shop, big, large internet retailer. They do a big tent event, and it's Friday and Saturday. I'll be there doing press coverage for it. So I'm not sure that I'll be able to put together show notes and actually get this thing recorded, or get that show recorded when I normally do. So I kind of have to play it by ear. I really do want to get something up. I like this weekly schedule. I really do enjoy doing these shows, even if they are really rough, being the early edition of the podcast. But I genuinely enjoy doing it. So we'll see how it goes, and we'll just kind of got to play it by ear. So if you've sat through this entire video, I want to thank you for doing that. Really appreciate it. If you watched the previous episodes, I really appreciate that as well. Love getting the comments on the website and YouTube. Thank you, all of the people that have commented. Again, sound like a broken record, but really appreciate it. Look forward to seeing your comments on this particular podcast. If you have any questions or topics you would like me to talk about, or anything you just want my opinion on, shoot me a note on my blog, comment on this with that question or that discussion topic, and I'll do what I can to get it in the next show. So again, thank you for watching. Happy smoking, happy shooting, and I will catch you later.